So we're back then with another beginner's guide video for Marvel Future Revolution. In this series of videos we look at the different characters that are available in the game and we cover everything you need to know about them. Now the game may have just launched globally, however I have been playing it for the last 2 months and I have all characters leveled up to level 100 and I put a fair amount of time into them. That's the reason I'm able to get these beginner's guides out day one for the game actually going global. Now what will we cover in this video? We start off with an overview of the character in question. Today we will of course be having a look at Iron Man, but we start off with a quick overview of the character, so straight away you can get a feel if you actually like the look of the character and you want to find out more about them. If you do, we follow that up talking about the character's potential. That's specific stats the character can actually assign into. You've then got the specialization next. That comes towards more the late game that you actually unlock that, but it can completely transform your characters. We'll follow that up by looking at some of the best skills on Iron Man. We'll then check out the outfits and I'll talk about which outfits would synergize with various different skills. We have battle badges and Omega cards next, and then finishing up a run over a few fun builds that I've been playing around with Iron Man as well, and I'll let you know the personal favourite build that I'm actually running. So with that out of the way, let's jump in and let's now start off with the overview first. Iron Man then is a hybrid character. He has a wide mix of melee and ranged attacks and he has everything you would expect from Iron Man. He has beams, rockets, satellite strikes, and he even has House Party Protocol where he can summon Iron Legion bots to fight alongside him. So overall he feels very much like Iron Man should. He has various different tools and utility in his kit for different scenarios. This does make him almost a jack of all trades and a master of none. So this means he's a great character for new players and players working their way through the various different modes, but when he gets to end game in specific modes he can fall off a little bit. Some of his moves can be a little bit on the clunkier side with how they actually track enemies, but the game has just launched so they very well may change that going forward, but that is a warning because it's something that I definitely did notice with him. Moving from Captain Marvel to Iron Man, you'll notice a difference in how the moves actually track. But overall I would say he's a really fun character to play, and if you are a fan of Iron Man I imagine you would absolutely love him, but it does have one or two drawbacks. So that's the overview. Let's now talk about the potential that's available on him. Very quickly then, for anyone that's perhaps new to the game, they'll be asking what is potential. Potential is various different stats that characters can actually spec into. It's different for each character, and the reason we're starting off with this, it's actually a great way to know where the game wants you to go with a specific character. Like if it gives you extra attack, it means the character is most likely meant to be a glass cannon. If it gives you extra defense, it means they're most likely supposed to be a tank or a defense character. Now I've actually made infographics of the majority of the screens here, so it's a lot easier to see everything in one page. So let's jump over to my infographic for the potential section. So with this infographic I broke down the 3 trees, but the most important part is actually down the bottom where I've added everything up. Now the majority of the characters when it comes to attack, defense and hit points, they'll all be very similar in what they actually get there, but where you define your character in regards to the potential system, and it lets you know the direction you should be going in, or at least the direction the developers want you to go in with a character, is the 3 stats we have down at the bottom. So you can see we've got accuracy rate here, we've got up to 14%. Accuracy rate actually allows you to be more likely to hit if an enemy has a high dodge rate. So if you're going up against Spider-Man, for example, you'll be dodging all over the place unless of course you have accuracy rate. You then get another 2 that are very much self-explanatory. You get crit rate and crit damage. So you can see with these that Iron Man very much is a character that's built towards putting out damage. He's almost like a glass cannon character in a way. So that's the potential. Let's talk about the specializations next. So this is the specialization system here. We do have an infographic that I'll show off in just a moment, but this is how it looks in game. It unlocks at level 70. Specializations can completely transform your character and take them to another level. You can only equip 4 of the powerful nodes at a time, and the currency from it comes from doing raids. So this is really what you'll get when you start to do your end game farming on characters. So let's jump in and let's have a look at that infographic for it. So what I'll do here, I'll run over the various different tooltips and I'll give my general thoughts on the specialisation in question as well. So we have Enhanced Cooling Pin first. This one you recover 30% of consumed ultimate skill gauge when using ultimate skill. It's not worth it at all. The ultimate skill isn't great and we're going to talk about that in just a minute or two. We've got Electric Current. This one is great and it actually synergises very well with the one below it. So this increases duration of debuffs dealt to enemy by 40%. So Iron Man has quite a few moves where he can apply burn to the enemy and that means they'll take an additional 20% extra damage. So this increases the duration of that by 40%. Now the burn attack is actually a weapon cartridges skill, so if you look at the next node here, it's Artificial Analysis, so increases damage dealt to supervillains by 30% for 8 seconds when using a weapon cartridges class skill, a cooldown of 15 seconds, so that of course it's less than 50% uptime you have on it, but if you actually put these nodes together along with the ability in his kit that allows you to apply the burn and get the extra 20% damage, you'll get extra 40% duration on it, and then you'll also have that extra period as well where you'll be dealing an additional 30% damage to supervillains. Supervillains are bosses, so you can do a huge amount of damage on them with that setup. Next up here we have multi-memory, so it increases guard damage by 10% for each equipped weapon cartridges skill, so you could bump this up a fair amount. However, I prefer to actually kill a boss rather than stun them, as much as a stun is nice, so I don't put a huge amount of value into this node here. Looking at the next tree, the AI tree, you've got Overclock. The first one here has potential to be pretty amazing, so it increases damage by 30%, which is a huge amount. There's no cooldown or anything on this, and stamina consumption by 30% when using attack skills, so you will need a way to actually regain your stamina, but we can get that via our kit and we can get that via our latest specialisation as well, so this is one that really does interest me a lot. We look at Algorithm Improvement next. Decreases skill cooldown by 25% for 10 seconds when using a Jarvis class skill. That's got potential to be pretty nice there. Pretty high cooldown on it though, it is a 20-second cooldown. We then have Energy Recycling, so 50% chance to recover 50% of consumed stamina when using a skill. Now this alongside Overclock could be really nice. Now the next one we have is Energy Skill, creates a barrier equal to 25% of max hit point for 5 seconds when guard is broken. Don't really like this. I prefer to dodge enemies and not have my guard broken in the first instance. I don't put a lot of value into that one there. We then have, for the final tree, it's Arc Reactor. You've got Repulsor Amplification. This one here increases skill damage by 6% for each equipped Repulsor energy class skill, so you could bump that up a fair amount. Then you're looking at around about 24 to 30% you could get in that. We have Energy Focus next. Increases ultimate skill gauge recovery by 42% for 5 seconds when using Repulsor Energy class skill. I wouldn't use this at all unless his ultimate actually gets a buff in future. It might be worthwhile then, but in the moment definitely wouldn't recommend it. We have Anti-Armor Bullet. When attacking a target with 50% hit point or below, increases armor penetration by 30%. Decent, nothing mind-blowing. And then finishing up, you've got Weakness Analysis, so increases damage dealt to bleeding or burn targets by 30%. That could work pretty amazing alongside the first tree and the Electric Current and Artificial Analysis as well. They're probably the strongest one, I would say. I would use a Specialisation tree to really boost his debuff and burn damage that he can do. You can get some really nice results from that. Maybe throw in Overclock if you can as well there for even more damage. But that is the Specialisations. Let's have a look at some of my favourite skills on Iron Man now. So heroes then actually have access to 32 different abilities. That's not including their basic and their ultimate, so I'm not going to run over all of them, but what I've done for each of the trees, I've selected a particularly interesting ability. Now the first one we have here, it's Unibeam and Focal Energy Shot. You're doing a huge amount of damage, it's close to 1800 damage. I absolutely loved this ability until I played Captain Marvel. Now Captain Marvel's got a similar ability. It does however do close to 3000 damage instead, and it actually tracks enemies. So this one can do a lot of damage, but it doesn't track the target. So you'll find very often if you're playing PvP, you'll fire this off. If they don't dodge, if they're perhaps stunned first, you'll absolutely melt them. If they dodge, then you're just a sitting duck. So potential to be a good ability, but you want your teammates or you want yourself to stun an enemy first and break their guard before you actually fire this off. We have extra firepower next. The reason I'm showing this, it's the weapon cartridges skill. This is the one I talked about that's got the burn in it, and when you apply that, it increases damage received by 20% for 6 seconds. So again, we can increase the duration of that, and we could also get that extra damage on your supervillains via this particular ability. We have Nanite Plasma next. This one is Spin Blade. The reason I'm showing this one off, it's actually got Bleed, because one of the specializations, you could gain additional damage if you had burn or bleed on an enemy. We have Tactical Satellite up next. This is your party time protocol. This is where you call in your Iron Legion bots to fight alongside you. What's amazing about these bots is they can cast just about any ability, so they can actually cast abilities. For example, the one we looked at that would apply the burn a moment ago, so your bots can actually apply debuffs, which is really pretty amazing. This is one of these skills. Some characters have skills that are locked in. This is definitely one of these locked in skills. Now, we do have another burn here with this one. This is just if you don't want to do the burn for the extra firepower, you can go for it here instead. Another one I'll quickly show off on this tree is you have EMP shot. You can see it on the right hand side. So this removes buffs when hit, which is certainly an interesting mechanic, and decreases the movement speed for 5 seconds upon landing. So quite situational, but maybe in the future against certain bosses that perhaps buff themselves, that could be really useful. Looking at Artificial Intelligence next, this one here is pretty amazing, and this is another one that I would say is probably locked in. So you knock back when the skill lands, but the reason you're using this, it increases attack by, in this instance at level 15, 36.22% for 10 seconds. It does have close to a 30-second cooldown, meaning you're only getting around about 33% uptime on it, but it's a huge damage buff you're actually getting from this. Now, one thing I'll show in here as well actually, and this will be relevant to the stamina build we were talking about earlier on, where you'll run out of stamina. You can see you've got this ability here called Sleep Mode. It decreases stamina consumption by 40.0% for 10 seconds. So that would work very nice once again with the specialization, where you're doing the extra 30% damage, but you have 30% stamina consumption alongside it. Now we have Arc Energy up next. This one here, nothing too interesting apart from the fact it's probably got, I would say, maybe the lowest cooldown in the game. It's 2.4 seconds, and I've seen some math guys do the math on it. The amount of damage it does and the low cooldown, you can actually do a fair amount of damage with this, so it's an interesting skill in that respect. We then have Arc Gauntlets. This one here, I'm showing it off just because it's a high guard break skill and it knocks down the enemy as well. Now, just finishing up the skills here, we'll talk about the ultimate ability. I've already really mentioned the fact it's pretty underwhelming. It looks pretty amazing, but from a mechanical point of view, it's underwhelming. So it's essentially just a large unibeam attack. It is good at breaking the enemy's guard, but the big problem with this, and it's similar to the other beam we looked at earlier on, it doesn't track. So you can fire this off, and if the enemy jumps to the side of you, if they jump behind you, then you're just a sitting duck. So if this could track or something like that in future, it would be absolutely amazing, but as it is, it's not something that I would say is worth actually specking around at all. But that's all the skills there. Next up, we'll have a look at the outfits, and we'll talk about how they can actually complement some of the skills we've just covered here. For these next few sections here, we'll just jump straight into the infographics. Now, when it comes to costumes, your end-game goal is to craft a regional costume. That will take a fair amount of time. I've been playing for 2 months and I only have 3 out of 4 pieces on one character, but I will add I'm near enough a free-to-play player. I'm not a whale or anything like that, but until you get your regional set, you'll want to craft one of the other sets. Now, the one I would actually recommend here would be your Mark 1 outfit. The reason being, your 4-set bonus for this, it will buff Artificial Intelligence. That's the skill you get that actually increases your overall damage, so I would say it's most definitely worthwhile going for. From an endgame perspective, what I would say you're looking for, you've got 2 great builds with Iron Man. You've firstly got your weapon cartridges set up, that's all about your burns and your debuffs. So you see that you can actually use either your Hydra or your Midgardia outfit for that. They've got slightly different stats on them in regards to the third set piece. Hydra is defense pierce, whereas your Midgardia is crit rate. I'd possibly prefer the crit rate one. You also have your Jarvis setup that will buff your damage as well as your party time protocol as well. This is a real fun one. Now, if you're going to go for this particular one, then you would go for the Sakaar outfit. You can see it gives you attack, crit rate, and then finishing up you've got up to +6 once you actually max out that armor for your Jarvis class skills. So that's the outfits and the ones I would recommend depending on the setup you're actually running. Let's check out some of the Omega cards that are available and which ones would be useful for them. When it comes to battle badges, the first set you always want to actually max out and grind first is the one you get via Blitz. That's the Maestro one that offers you the super villain damage. Other ones, once you actually start to jump into the Dark Zone, that are worth going for on Iron Man. It's a bit boring, but I would say Lord of the Desert could be good. That's just giving him his flat damage increase. You've also got one here that actually increases your hit rate. Quite niche, but he already has hit rate as part of his potential. It's a Lord of Jotunheim, this particular one. It drops from Lofi in the Dark Zone, but this can increase your hit rate even higher. So if you're going up against a particularly troublesome Spidey or any other characters in the future that may dodge a lot, then you'll have a much higher chance to actually hit them. But overall, the safest one I would say to go for, and the one you'll get the most bang for your buck from, would have to be the Lord of the Desert one, and that comes from Maestro in the Dark Zone. That's the battle badges. Let's talk now about the Omega cards. For the Omega cards here, then I'll break the infographics into two different sets. This is your free to play set. The next one we'll look at will contain special cards you can only actually get in the store. So looking at this set here, what would I recommend for Iron Man? So you've got Midgardia 4. This particular one, the set bonus is really nice. It's all about damage. You've got crit damage and you've got crit rate on it. You've then got Dark Zone 3. You've got some nice primary stats on it. You've got villain damage, crit damage, defense pierce and super villain damage. And then alongside that, your 2 set bonus is attack damage, and then your 4 set bonus is total damage. I believe from people that have been playing around with this and maybe not done the math yet, but they've been playing around with total damage, it looks like it's a really strong stat with how it actually scales. If I find out more about it in future, I will of course let you know. But that's the 2 sets I would recommend free to play players actually aim towards. Let's now look at the sets that are more for whales. So these sets here, you can see I've actually mentioned next to the name of each of the card types how many special cards you need, and as mentioned, the special cards only come via the store, and there's very low drop rate in getting the ones you actually need. So without a doubt, this is your whale setup here. Looking at ones that could work on Iron Man from a PvE perspective, Midgardia 6 would be nice. You're doing extra supervillain damage, you've got defense pierce, and then you've got defense thrown in there as well. From a PvP perspective, you could go for Dark Zone 4 or Dark Zone 5. I probably would say Dark Zone 4, that's on the top right, would be better for him. That's more of a damage orientated PvP set, whereas Dark Zone number 5 down the bottom right is more of a defense orientated PvP, and Iron Man's all about putting out damage. So that's all the Omega cards. We're now going to finish up just running over some of the builds that are available on them that I've been playing around with and having some fun with as well. So the first build I'll show off here, it's all about buffs and debuffs and making use of the weapon cartridges skills. So if you were to use this, you would run the Hydra or the Midgardia regional outfits. Now the first ability we have is not weapon cartridges, but this is a lock really on any Iron Man build. This is the one that increases your attack by over 36%, so that's really pretty amazing to start off your rotation with that. For ability number 2, we're going into debuffs here. This is currently only level 1. Maxed out, and with your regional suit you'll probably be decreasing the enemy's defense by around about 40-50%. So this is really incredible. We have another buff of sorts here. This one applies a burn to the enemy and it increases damage received on the enemy by 20% for 6 seconds. Once you've cast all your buffs and debuffs, you would move into your hard hitting abilities. So instead of the House Party Protocol, I actually really like this one here, Tactical Satellite and Ion Cannon. This will fire off 3 satellite blasts that track the enemy, so you can be flying away, you can be evading, and these will track the enemy and it absolutely destroys them. You can see the amount of damage each of the blasts do. It's over 1500 damage. And then following on from that, you've got weapon cartridges. Once again, this one fires out up to 16 missiles that will target enemies. If you're going up against a single target, all of the missiles will hit that one target, so you can do a huge amount of damage on this as well. So that's the weapon cartridges setup. Let's look at the next one I've been playing around with. So this next setup that I'm running here, this is all about buffing the Jarvis skills. The regional set you would use for this would of course be Sakaar. With this, you'll call in your summons. They can give you a nice amount of buffs. Because we don't have to spend as many skills in actually generating buffs, we can use a cleanse skill just to mix things up a little bit. And we also go for some high guard break skills which can synergise well with our uni beam. You'll break the guard on an enemy and then they're a sitting duck really for the beam. But let me quickly go through the skills here to show them. So the first one, and again this is a lock in any build really, it's giving you your increased attack damage for 10 seconds. For ability number 2 here, we have another burn which you can actually apply, which increases your damage for 20 seconds. This one's slightly different from the burn we were using in the last ability. Now the reason we do that is we want to free up this particular weapon here, which is micro missiles. So this is the one that's a cleanse, and it moves buffs when hit, and it decreases movement speed for 5 seconds upon landing as well. Next up, we have the tactical satellite in your party time protocol. So again, as mentioned, your summons will actually cast skills that have buffs in them, which is really pretty amazing. And then finishing up here, because we mentioned you can break the guard on enemies with this build a bit easier than the other one, we're using the Unibeam and the Focal Energy Shot. Just make sure the enemy, the guard is broken or they're stunned, or maybe even, for example, you could use this skill here to slow them down first, so they're less likely to actually get out of the way of the Unibeam, then fire it off, and you should do a fair amount of damage on them. So with that, that really should be everything you need to know about Iron Man. So if the video has been helpful, please take the time to hit the like, share and subscribe button and leave a comment below. Engagement is exceptionally important in videos. If you don't engage with videos, then YouTube doesn't actually recommend them. So please do leave a comment, and if you get any questions or anything else like that, any feedback, then do leave it in the comments below. And as always, thanks for tuning in, stay safe, see you all again soon.